So Set 12 has been out for over a day now, and I hit plat, which is around top 400 of North America as of the time of recording. With that being said, I feel like it's safe for Exterior to tell you about the meta and patch 14.15. In this video, we're going to cover the strongest synergies, strongest items, and strongest units. We're going to start with our synergy tier list, and this is not in any particular order, it's just in the list. So we're going to start off with God tier, and Eldritch would be the best opener in general. It's very powerful in the beginning because you summon stuff, which is a +1 unit on the board, and on top of that, it does some CC. The good thing about Eldritch is you can play vertical Eldritch into the late game, but in order to do that, you need a emblem with it because it's kind of hard to hit Briar. And then by the time you do get an emblem and a Briar, you just take away Ash and just play like +1 like Karma, Zerath, or Tom Kench. Next synergy is the best synergy hands down. If you get 8 of them, which is having 2 spats, you just drop everything, sell everything, and play just vertical Witchcraft. The reason why this synergy is so powerful is if you read everything on the ability list, you can see why. And on top of that, Fiora is the best unit overall, and she's a Witchcraft. And it's also one of the best splash trades. Like you can just have 2 out and it will change the fight. And one of the other best splash trade synergies you can have in is Arcana. This splash trade is actually really good because you can get more damage and stuff, or even more defense stuff. Most comps play with Arcana, and then you just throw in a +1 like Zerath at level 9. The best one to pick with the item picker would be either Hecarim or Tom Kench. One of the best tank synergies right now would be like a Bastion, mainly because of Hecarim with the Arcana idea, and on top of that, Taric is actually pretty good tank. And then the best AD DPS overall synergy would be multi-strikers. You can play up to 3 or 7. Very powerful because Callista is the main carry. And one of the most broken splash trades, if you can fit it in, would be Preserver, because this gives you a lot of health back and a lot of mana regen. For the strong side, meaning that like they're actually really good, but it's just not strong enough to be like God tier, where like you can just play them anytime and you're always gonna win with it. For the strong side, it will be Fairy. Vertical Fairy is actually really strong because you get a free rating item. If you can have like 2 spats for it, I think you need that, but even 2 Fairy in general is okay. And the Fairy units in general themselves are really strong too, such as Rakan, Callista, and Milio. Those 3 are really powerful right now in the meta. And Vertical Pyro is really strong if you have an emblem for it. If you don't, it's not really strong playing vertical, but they're also a really good splash trade, like just having 2 for main comps, such as like having it in multi-strikers is pretty good because you get extra attack speed for it. The next one after that, Portal is pretty good for vertical, same thing like Pyro if you have an emblem for it. If you don't, it's not strong enough. And the other thing about it is, it's a really good early game synergy, therefore that's why I say it's strong. The units themselves are kind of okay, but the main one that's really strong would be Zoe because she reduces magic resist, and on top of that, she's also a Witchcraft, which is basically a God tier synergy. Another strong one, just because the units are actually strong for it, Chrono is actually a really good splash trade as well because it gives you 20% health back after like 16 seconds of combat or something like that, and it gives you some AP. So essentially it's like Ascension, but like a weaker version of it. Mage is actually pretty decent, just mainly due because Veigar is very strong, and if you play 5 mages, he kind of one-shots, and Nami is actually pretty strong utility unit on top of that. Another pretty good strong trait, mainly due because the units are good, like Rise is pretty strong, so therefore Scholar is good for it, and same thing with Milio. And Milio is a Scholar, so therefore Scholar is good for those reasons. Not because of synergy itself, but mainly because of the units. Same thing like Scholar. Shapeshifter is a really strong frontline synergy, and the units that are strong with it would be like Nico and Nasus. And now we're finally on the it's okay section, meaning that like it's not the strongest thing to play, but like if you have to play it, it's not bad. We got Frost. Frost in general is kind of bad, but if you have a Frost emblem, it's pretty good to play that. You can just throw it on like Varus with the synergy and just play full Frost. And then next up would be Incanter. This synergy in general isn't too strong, but the units themselves are really good, like Syndra and Cassiopeia and the Karma. Just throwing 2 Incanter out is good enough, but Incanter itself is not enough to change the tide of the game. And Vanguards in general, the synergy itself is pretty weak, but the unit such as Blitzcrank and Tom Kench, they're strong, so if you play them, you might as well have a Vanguard on the board. Kind of the same thing with a Cancer. And Warrior is also the same thing along the lines of these two, because Warrior itself is pretty weak, but the units themselves are pretty strong, such as Nyla, Fiora, and Akali. And now we finally got the trash section, meaning like they're actually really bad. In my opinion, Sugarcraft is actually really bad, but there is some people that do success on them. Main reason why they are successful with them is just due to because they get an early game with a lot of items. In order to stack it, you need a lot of items. And the units themselves are kind of weak at the moment. The only strong one is like Jinx. Gwen is actually pretty weak. And then same thing with Blaster. The synergy itself is kind of weak, and all the units are kind of bad. And Hunter is kind of the same thing with Blaster, where all the units are bad and the synergy is bad. And now we're gonna move on to like our items tier list, which is like the best items you should always slam. For melee, Bloodthirster is always a must. This item is actually very powerful for all the meta units. And then to complement the Bloodthirster, Asterix Gauge and Titan's Resolve is very good for that. And then for a defensive item for most of the melee units, a QSS or Edge is good for that. Moving on to the magic items, having any mana regen items such as blue buff and Spirit Soldier is really good on specific units. And an item to help give you more mana back would be Nastress 2, because it gives you a lot of attack speed to keep autoing to get mana back. And then amplification items such as Death Cap and Jewel Gauntlet. I would say Death Cap is a lot better, but Jewel Gauntlet is okay to give you more damage on the board. And if you need healing on the board, a Gunblade is really good for that, to debuff the board, because this item reduces magic resist, which is Static Shiv, because you need to have some sort of anti-heal on the board. A Merlocon is the best anti-heal item you can have in the game. For range units, the best range item would be Rageblade. Always built this, no matter what, is BIS for almost every range unit, even such as Rise, because Rise scales off attack speed. And then to complement like most AD range units, having a Last Whisper is really good for this because you need to break armor. And then another item, because it's good for early game, and it's pretty decent late game, would be Relentless Hurricane. And I forgot to put it in here, Giant Slayer is also really good for range units as well. And then any amplification items such as like IE, Deathblade are okay, but it's not really mandatory to have. And for take items, the best ones would be Redemption, just because the healing is actually really good on this item. Onyx Spark to shred magic resist, and on top of that, it does give you some HP. But if you have a Static Shiv for your AP carries, you don't need it. And vice versa with Onyx Spark. If you already have it, you don't need Static Shiv. You have to at least one of them. And Decall is very powerful for tanks at the moment because there's a lot of magic damage, since every frontline unit that's a tank is basically magic damage. And in a good, like, AD reduction item would be like Steadfast Heart. Having a Bramble Vest isn't too good, but I mean, if you have it, you might as well put it on. But the best one would be Steadfast Heart for armor. And then this tier list is going to be for more like the carry units of the comps. And then for God tier, it's Fiora. Fiora is the hands down best unit in this patch. It's basically just Fiora meta right now. And she's also like super flexible, therefore you can play her with like almost any comp. The best range DPS unit would be hands down Callista. You just play Callista with full multi-striker or Fairy. It works either way. And she combos kind of decently with Fiora. And I would say she's like the second best AP caster unit, which would be Karma. She's actually very strong because she actually is pretty flexible. You can play her in almost like any style, which is like Chrono and with Preservers. And all the Honeymancy units are strong, but the thing about Veigar is you don't play him as Honeymancy, you play him as a mage. And playing 5 mage with Veigar and blue buff, you'll pop off. And he's a really strong reroll comp with Vex on the side. And speaking of Honeymancy, Kog'Maw is a really good Honeymancy reroll comp with Jinx on the side as a secondary carry. And another Honeymancy reroll comp that's really strong is Nunu if you have his hero augment. And I kind of forgot to mention in the synergies tier list, yes, Honeymancy is God tier. And then next up, I would say the best AP unit overall would be Syndra. This unit is actually just not balanced. She's so strong playing as a 2-star to hold items for your AP carries later like Karma or Veigar, or she's actually very good as a reroll comp playing with Cassiopeia on the side, and Cassiopeia is also very strong as well. Basically like a Bard unit from last set where you just put double Rageblade on Cassiopeia and a Gunblade. And then for Syndra, having like Spirit Soldier plus any AP item is so strong on her. And speaking of strong AP units, Xerath is a good +1 at level 9, or you can even play him as a carry. He's actually strong either way. And then moving on to the strong, where you can actually play them and somewhat win with them, but not really get first place too often with them, would be Varus if you have a Pyro spat. Like same thing like I said earlier with the Pyro synergy. If you don't have a spat on him, he's not strong enough. And his items are actually pretty interesting to BIS. It would be like a Spirit Soldier with Last Whisper, and then +1. And then next to that, which is similar to Pyro, is Frost, which is in this case is the Olaf carry, which is Bloodthirster plus whatever items you can put on him. And then for the Frost emblem, you want to throw it on Varus, funny enough. And then you know his BIS items, which was Spirit Soldier, Last Whisper, and then plus this item if you play Frost vertical. And then funny enough, with these two units, they're actually trash if you don't have the emblems. So I would say if you have the emblems, you can play them. If you don't even try. These two units are also really good like substitute item holders. Like for example, if you hit them level 2 first before the actual main carries, such as Fiora and Callista, you can just put the items on them instead, which is Olaf is a good item holder for Fiora, and then Varus is a really good item holder for Callista. If you get them level 2 first before getting Callista or Fiora 2. If not, you could just fast 9 and let them be the item holders for Olaf, for example, is for Briar or Camille, and then for Varus is a good item holder for Smolder. And then all hero augments such as Galio, Blitzcrank, and Elise is actually really good. So if you find a hero augment such as them, just pick them up. The difference between them and the Nunu hero augment is that the Nunu hero augment has a really high win rate because it's super strong. But these other hero augment users are also actually pretty good too. And the ones that you don't see here, the other hero augments, they're not that good. And Rise is a strong unit overall, like flexibility wise. Like for example, Scholar Rise is pretty good, or if not, Vertical Portal Rise is good as well. And then Shapeshifters is pretty strong in general. So the main carry for Shapeshifters would be Briar, and the secondary carry with Briar would be Smolder. So you have 2 blasters in the back with 6 Shapeshifters in front. And some good reroll cons would be Kassadin multi-striker reroll, and then Nyla reroll with Akali, and then some other stuff with them on the side. If you want to look at good sites for like comps and stuff, you can look at tactics.tools, or you can look at TFT Academy, which is made by Dish Soap, the world's winner of set 11, and Frodan, a really good content creator. Their site is actually really good. I'm not sponsored by them. I just really like their stuff, because look at this, if you click on the comp here, you can see everything you need to know. If Frodan or Dish Soap's looking at this, please sponsor me. On top of that, I'm not associated with any of these 2 sites, but the sites is going to be in the description down below. Now that we know the best items and the best units, we must know what is the BIS IS for these units. And this is like the must-have items, meaning that if these units don't have the items, they cannot function that well. And the best melee item to have for your carries would be Bloodthirster. If you slam this item, you would win the majority of your games. And the item holders that are good with this would be Fiora, Olaf, Briar, Nyla, and Kassadin. And for the best item for magical units would be Blue Buff. This item allows them to keep casting a lot more, so putting it on Karma or Veigar is really good. But a unit that cannot use a blue buff would be Syndra. If you do put blue buff on her, her DPS output will be a lot lower because her mana pool is a little too high for blue buff compared to these two. But if you put Spear Soldier on the other two, it works fine as well. It's just blue buff is better. And then hands down for all the ranged units, Ginsu's Rage Blade is the best item for them. And is actually really strong on Callista. You want to put 2 Rage Blades on her. Same thing with Cassiopeia. Having 2 is very powerful on her. And then Rise, it works really well with him. Same with Galio. If you get the Deja Vu hero augment, having 2 Rage Blade is very powerful on him as well. And then Kog'Maw is good with a singular one because he's more like a damaged ADC one. So you want to play him with like Rage Blade, Last Whisper +1. But other than that, Rage Blade on all these units are so powerful right now. Now we're gonna move on to like 4 cost unit combos. This means that like you can flex between like 2 different carries and there'll be one unit that will glue them together. For example, you could play Fiora as the main carry or Karma as the main carry. And if you have a Witch Spat for Karma, that's a plus. But the units that glue these 2 units together would be Cassiopeia, which is an Incanter for Karma, and the Witchcraft for Fiora. Another good combination would be Callisto with Fiora, because the main unit that glues them together would be Akali with Warrior for Fiora and Multi-Striker for Callisto. And then these other 2 don't really matter too much, but if you do decide to play it, it'll be Olaf as the main carry, and then you get Varus. If you get a Frostbat on him, that'll be better. The units that glue them together would be Hui for Blaster with Varus and Frost with Olaf. Lastly, main carry Varus and then secondary carry Smolder with a Pyrospat on him would be really good. The 2 units that do glue them together would be Nasus and Shyvana because they're both shapeshifter, and Shyvana is a dragon with Smolder, and Nasus is a Pyro with Varus. Now we got real unit combos, and this page is more for like who is the main carry and who is the main secondary carry with the main tank, compared to the last page which was like who is the unit that glues the main units 2 together. For example, we got Kassadin as the main carry, Akali as a secondary carry, and the main tank would be Jax. The reason why is because all these 3 are multi-strikers. Next comp would be main carry Kog'Maw with secondary carry Jinx because they're both hunters, and the main tank would be Wukong. This unit is actually very busted, so having him as a main tank is actually really good. Just have like Gargoyle Stoneplate plus whatever tank items on him. Next up, one of the strongest comps to play as a reroll is Syndra as the main carry with Spear Soldier, Nashor's Tooth, and Death Cap. You can just do Spear Soldier plus whatever the other 2, but those are the best items on her. And then Cassiopeia is basically like Bardock Less set, where you have 2 Rage Blades and a Gunblade. They both synergize really well with one another because they're both Incanters. The main tank would be Shyvana, and the rest of the units you play Shapeshifters. And they're all 2 cost units, so you can 3-star them very easily. And another pretty strong comp would be main carry Nyla with a secondary carry Akali, and then the main tank would be Shen. Pretty simple with this. And that is it for my patch 14.15 meta tier list. If you have any questions, just let me know in the comment section down below. And the main reason why I haven't done comp guides yet is mainly due because we don't have like set comps yet. And on top of that, this patch is really flexible. As you saw earlier, you play Fiora +1. So that's basically about it. Until then, I'll see you guys later.